Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. There we are. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transue, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 417 of the Health Detective Podcast. We're moving right along here, and I want to welcome pretty much what was the number? 600 or 700 new subscribers that we got from our clinical summit week that we just did the week of May 12th. That is selfishly probably one of my favorite parts about doing these holistic health weeks and clinical summit weeks, because they are nice enough here to let us host this on YouTube. And the reason I say nice enough is because, guys, we're a fun-loving health place, but it's still a company. And, Reed, the founder's a very nice guy, but he also likes his numbers to look good. And so when I have to report my YouTube stats and how we did in the month, it is a lot sweeter when I can come off a clinical summit week. So you guys rock, and we appreciate any of the new people being here. And like I promised you on clinical summit week, what's so cool about our podcast is I think this is very unique to the industry. I genuinely cannot think of another podcast that does this. We're one of the only ones that I know that goes live 3 times a week and allows you to ask our guests questions while they're on here. So I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. I know it's not everyone's style, but you kind of get the best of both worlds with us because you can still listen to the audio side. And then on top of it, you could be live with us asking questions. One thing I want to shout out today, I don't think I actually even have a full link for you guys yet. We will have this very, very soon. But our 4th annual summer open house is going to be coming up. So there's not really something that you can mark your calendars for per se, because we have over 30 live events promised for you in the month of June. They are not at specific times. We've done this this way historically because it seems to benefit the most amount of people. So rather than just say, it's every day, Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern, it's like, well, that might work really well for a section of our audience, but that's not really going to work well for another section. So how we've done this is we have done the entire month of June, basically from, I think, 11 a.m. Eastern until 5 Eastern. People can book in at various times, the speakers that we've invited. So some days you'll have sessions at 11 and 2 Eastern. Other days you'll have sessions at 1 and 4 Eastern or something similar to that. So what you can expect at a summer open house, again, this is just something to be ready for. We have about 15 six-figure FDN sessions for you. And if you're new to this podcast and saying, isn't this a health podcast? The only reason that we highlight six-figure FDNs is because one of the reasons that people don't get into this work is because they're sometimes afraid, how do I do the business side? How do I make this work? Well, we're going to give you 15 different FDNs with completely different backgrounds and life experiences that have figured out how to make this business model work for them. So it's not about making money and just, how do I get to 6 figures selling people health stuff? That's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to show you that it's possible. And plus, Christa and I live in America, so at this point, 100K is just what you need if you want to take one vacation each year. So it's not as cool as it once sounded, unfortunately. But yes, look forward to that. We got a great month planned with a bunch of other stuff as well. I want to get to our guest now. This is someone that I got to meet in, I know it was June. Was that June of 2022? Does that sound right?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
I cannot believe, that has been a full 3 years ago. It was the only time I ever went to Boston. Cool city. So I will read her bio here, and then we will get into this. Christa Rebidue, a functional I've actually never said your last name out loud. Is that right?
Rebidue, yeah.
Yeah, I just did that off the top of my head, but I'm like, I can call you Christa. Christa Rebidue, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, helps women over 40 uncover the root causes of their fatigue so they can reclaim their energy and feel like themselves again. Her approach is caring, personalized, and grounded in functional lab testing and real-life experience. She knows what it's like to hit a wall. Despite doing all the right things, she struggled with relentless fatigue herself that impacted every part of her life. It wasn't until she discovered the power of functional wellness that she began to truly heal. Now, as an active woman who values vitality and balance, she's passionate about helping others walk the same path toward clarity, energy, and sustainable health. I feel like we were saying this off air, right? This is so long overdue. I'm really glad you're here. I can't believe it's been 3 years. That definitely is overdue. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I mean, I met you probably 2 weeks before I took my exam for FDN. So
Yes.
you were great encouragement for me for sure. And it was exciting to be in an FDN expo, it was great.
Well, and if I remember correctly, didn't you got to meet someone there that you guys had been like kind of talking online, and that was the first time you met in person. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, well, Christa Lyon, so
Yes.
Christa and
Yes.
Christa, and she lives like 30 minutes from me, and we hang out all the time. Like we're the same age. We graduated very similar times. So it's great to kind of like just, go back and forth a little bit with each other.
I love that that's happening more and more because I always say, I remember when I graduated like 8 years ago, if I found, and it's not that there weren't actually a lot of FDNs, there were, it's that our community wasn't set up the way that it was with the trainee group and graduate group. Those things didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have a way to talk to people. So if I found someone that was in my state of Pennsylvania at the time, I thought that was the most amazing thing. And like now I'm on a live the other day and someone's like, oh, wait, you're in Wilmington, North Carolina? I go to that Costco. And I'm like, not that I would be worried about that person. It's almost creepy because I can basically throw a rock at the
Right.
So I'm like, all right, a little too close now, but it's kind of amazing that it's an online platform, but this is happening everywhere. Let's talk about your story and how you got into this. I don't even think I fully got into this with you in Boston, and quite frankly, even if I did, it's been 3 years, so I'd love to hear it again. What did your first health symptoms look like, and when did they begin for you?
So about 7 years ago, I kind of crashed and burned. And I mean, now I look back, I can see it years before that, but obviously just wasn't paying attention. But 7 years ago, I was so exhausted that at first I thought it was normal because, I had kids, I was working, I was trying to work out. I was a competitive athlete when I grew up. So I was, still in the gym space, still trying to work out really hard, trying to be 20, when you're not. And I started noticing like after work, I would have to come home and I'd fall asleep on the couch. I would just nap in the middle of the day. And at first I thought that was kind of okay, but then it definitely got to almost be every day. There was a point in workouts where I was starting to get dizzy and almost passing out that I couldn't tolerate a workout. And again, I'm a competitive athlete, even though I'm a little bit older, there's just no reason for that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I definitely felt depressed. I didn't really want to do much. I didn't really want to go out and see people. I was starting to just like not go out and do things. So finally, once I passed out and workout, I finally was like, all right, I should probably go see my doctor. And she ran a TSH, she ran an EKG, took my blood pressure and ran a little bit of blood work and pretty much told me I was fine. She's like, you're fine. And I'm like, I'm 45, passing out in workouts, crashing on the couch after work. I'm not fine. She's like, you have 2 young kids, a husband, you're working 40 hours, you're working out. She's like, you need to stop working out, maybe lower your hours at work. And I was like, that's your answer. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was like, I'm not taking that as the answer. So that's when I was out searching to try and figure out what was wrong with myself.
I'm sorry, because I think you actually said this. I just want to make sure I have this correctly, and I'm mentioning it for a reason. Did you just say your doctor? You said she, so it was a woman doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The reason I asked that is because there's these crazy studies that I'm not saying this makes it okay at all or any better, but it's just something we have to work on. So there's these crazy studies that show doctors of both genders, so male and female, which is even crazier because you'd think it'd be maybe just sexist one way,
right,
are more likely to tell women that their symptoms are because of these lifestyle or stress related things. So it's just kind of amazing because my mom's doctor originally was a male, and it was kind of the same thing. It's like he actually said to her, you're a woman business owner, and that's why you're dealing with this stuff. She had Graves' disease, like would have been able to be diagnosed at that time, and no one caught it. And then for you, it's like, yes, obviously that's not normal. You clearly know you had more stuff going on now. And then yet the same kind of thing happens. So on one end, I'm glad that they're recognizing to some degree that the stress of life can contribute to this. I just think they're not necessarily doing it in the right way. So did you believe that when that was first said to you? Because I know that you're not coming from this like advanced medical background by any means. It's like you're into health, but it's not like you're a doctor yourself. So It's powerful when these people say this stuff to us. And that's why I'm not trying to poke fun at them. But the reason I go into this so deeply is because to me, these words matter. And I think they need to realize how much of an authority figure we all view them as. So when they say something, we take it literally.
Yeah.
So when they said that to you, like, did you just say, okay, I guess I'm fine? Or did you not take no for an answer pretty much from the get-go?
For a little while, I was like, oh my God, it's all in my head. Like, I must be just losing my mind. And I guess maybe it is just life. But as it continued and got worse, I knew there was more answers. And so I started listening to podcasts, and I was like listening to like women's hormones. I knew I was getting to the age of perimenopause. So I knew that those were going to come into play. So I was trying to figure out myself. So I was just listening to podcast after podcast after podcast. And that's when I finally heard Reed on a podcast, Reed Davis. And I was just like, this is the coolest thing to be able to, like, he was just checking off boxes for me. Like, are you tired? Yes. Are you not sleeping well? Oh my God, yes, I'm not sleeping at night. I'm waking up every 2 hours. Do you not digest well? I mean, I was bloated 24/7. All these check marks just kept checking off. And I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to actually look into something deeper. And I actually did run into, I did see a functional doctor at one point because I was really desperate. And again, he ran a little bit of blood work and he was like, take these supplements and just stop working out. And I was like, okay, I'm a competitive athlete. Like, workout is my life. Like, I'm getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym so that I can, still make it through my day. And you're just telling me to just stop. So I think finding FDN and getting my labs done while I was in FDN was mind blowing and pretty much, I feel like, saved my life in a good portion of way.
Nice. I don't know if you've heard me ask something like this before, but I have to backtrack for a second because I feel like when people tell their stories, I don't think you realize how amazing some of the stuff is in terms of, okay, you get this thing by your doctor. So really you didn't go to the doctor until this, at least for these problems.
Right.
Then they tell you one thing and then pretty rapidly, it seems, after experiencing more and more of the same symptoms and realizing they're not resolving, you're already kind of doing this alternative path. So the question I want to get into is, I do not understand how some people kind of just open their minds to something alternative. Even something like podcast is not something that every single person
Right.
goes out and listens to, let alone go to a functional doctor. Did you have any influence in your life between that first doctor and then the first functional doctor that made you more open to natural medicine? Or like, why did you even assume that you should go to something like a functional doctor?
So I'm a physical therapist by trade. So I was obviously in health for my whole life. And I think I've always tried to self-treat myself no matter what, because I just don't really like going to the doctor. So like, there was a point where I broke my ankle and I was like, you know what, I can fix it myself. I don't need to go to the doctor. So I've always kind of been the person to kind of search out. I have a bunch of sisters I have 4 sisters, and one of them actually had been to a functional doctor. And that's how she was like, maybe you should just go out there and see them and see what's going on. And so that's when I actually saw that functional doctor. I wouldn't ever say that I was ever closed-minded to anything. Obviously we were very born Western medicine. I've never been opposed to, I've heard about, supplements. And my mother had brought us to a chiropractor for most of our lives when we were younger. So, having that natural chiropractor aspect, gives you a little bit of functional health because, you're trying to fix yourself without drugs and things like that. So, over my multiple broken bones and sprained bodies through gymnastics, the chiropractor, pretty much put me back together. So again, kind of always in my life a little bit. Did I ever think that this is where I would be? No. In the process of, finally feeling really crappy, I had actually said to myself, I wish I could go back to school and redo myself and come back as a functional doctor. And just because at that point I had started to listen to those podcasts and like, okay, maybe I do need a couple of supplements. Maybe my gut is kind of off and maybe my hormones are going crazy. So I kind of been in the functional space a little bit, never like this.
Sure. Well, and I would say functional medicine, like even natural, I'll say natural and Western medicine are this spectrum, right? Because you could have two extreme on either end. That happens all the time. I would already say that people that get into physical therapy, at least from what I've seen, are more in the center. I think I've had at least 2 instances with various things that I've injured where physical therapists were like adamant that, hey, if you want to, you can try this first before you go and get that surgery. And I was able to avoid both of those surgeries. So they're already kind of people that I feel like are open to, hey, the body's very powerful if you put in some work, because it is always more work doing the more natural approach, but I think it's worth it. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for humoring me on that, because I'm fascinated. Like, why can everyone not see this instantly? And if I could figure out a pattern, then hopefully we can influence more people to just be more open-minded to it. So you get into FDN. One of the things that we include in the cost of tuition is now it's all of the lab tests, which is amazing. It's like officially all of them, even the food sensitivity test. When you went through, I'm guessing you would have gotten 4 of the lab tests, probably, right? And the metabolic typing?
Correct.
Okay. So for all intents and purposes, basically all of them. So what were some of the things that you discovered on those functional labs that maybe your functional doctor even had not looked at, let alone the Western doctor?
Yeah. And I will say, when I got my labs back, I burst into tears because she had me thinking it was in my head. She told me nothing was wrong yet. I was feeling like complete crap. and really not functioning very well at all. So whenever I got the labs back and I was like, she was like, this is why you're not feeling great. I was like, the validation was amazing. So my food sensitivities was, I think, one of my more eye-opening ones, because the things that I triggered for were things that I was eating every day, but I'm a healthy eater. Like I ate a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, you know, clean meats, things like that. And my triggers were like apples, strawberry, spinach, you know, pork, dairy, which I kind of knew anyways. And, you know, like all the things that were just like healthy. Like, why would I think that eating spinach and almonds was going to send me over the edge? So I think the food sensitivities was very eye-opening. I ended up having a parasite, which I had no idea. My gut was a disaster. I had low good bacteria, so I had like really no stomach support. I did trigger for anti-gliadin, so I knew gluten was going to come out of my diet. My liver was just over toxin burdened, you know, the stress. And it was funny because like I knew I didn't feel well, but then again, you have to start now picking apart your life and figuring out like, okay, why don't I feel well once I saw the labs? But yeah, my digestion was poor, which explained exactly why I was having, you know, a lot of bloating because I wasn't digesting well. So the labs for me was the validation that I needed to be like, okay, I knew it wasn't in my head. I know my body extremely well from being a gymnast, being in PT and everything. So I knew that there was something wrong, but for some reason, someone telling me that there's nothing wrong with you was just, I just wasn't going to let that stand for the rest of my life. I was 45. I wasn't living like this for the rest of my life. So labs, super validating. And I will say with my clients, super validating.
So when you say, just to be clear to someone who's maybe never ran things like this, the bursting into tears, I wouldn't think it's fair to say that it's complete happiness, but you're not saying that it's bursting into tears from sadness. It's almost just like a relief, like a finally I know what's going on.
Completely. She was just, and the advisor that went through them with me, you know, because I told her, she's like, they told me it was all in my head, and she's like, oh, sweetheart. She's like, nope, take a look at this. And it was just so nice to be able to see something on paper that showed exactly why. You know, it wasn't even like she was guessing, right? It was legit facts on a piece of paper that was like, this is why you don't feel well. And I think it was just, I had held it in for so long that once I saw it and I was like, okay, then there is a reason, and it's fixable too, right? So that was that whole relief of, okay, I can do something to fix it. And this doesn't mean that this is my downfall for the rest of my life at 45 years old.
So what did you have to change then in your life to get yourself to a better place? And the reason I'm saying it like that is because you're one of those people, which happens probably maybe 10, 15% of the time on our podcast, that you were already, I would argue, living better, at least thinking that you're living better than most people out there, certainly most Americans, right? Just the fact that you're taking your physical fitness so seriously. Most of the physical therapists that I know are some of like just like the happiest, fittest people that I know. One of my best friends is a doctor of physical therapy. He lives like 10 minutes down the road. So what did you have to change? Because I imagine for you, it was almost probably a paradigm shift because, again, you already thought that you were doing well in a lot of ways. So sometimes those changes for the people that believe that they were already doing well, that can be even tougher in a sense. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, what were the biggest changes that helped you?
Yeah, the hardest one for me was, so my adrenals, I was not producing like any cortisol. I was in the exhaustive phase, and I know you know, but some don't know, but there's a skull and crossbones at the bottom of that map.
That's Reed, baby.
Where I was at the skull and crossbones of exhausted body phase. And, you know, I knew that I had to kind of take off exercise for a little bit. I didn't realize how drastically I had to. I pretty much had to stop everything. So I took months off of the gym, stopped my membership for a little while, and I pretty much just walked. That's all I could handle. And, you know, slowly, a couple months later, I could start to definitely get into maybe some yoga. But I think the hardest thing for me was to get rid of that mentality of that I needed to go to the gym. I needed to be at the gym for hours. I needed to be multiple times a week. And I think setting that off of my life was a huge in my recovery. My food sensitivity is gluten. Gluten came out. And I will tell you that I couldn't hear the food noise back then because I think my body was such a mess. But now when I eat anything that has gluten in it, I hear it. I feel it. My body doesn't like it. It definitely yells at me when I eat gluten. So now I could, once I get that food noise kind of settled down. But I think really the biggest part was changing my eating habits, trying to get sleep. Sleep was huge for me also. I really was not sleeping. So changing my sleeping patterns and doing a couple of supplements to kind of help me get into better sleep was, life-changing for me too. But I think the exercise was probably the hardest part for me.
Sure. Okay. So then again, even with the foods, it's not that you're eating so poorly, but even if you even had something like a long-term gluten sensitivity, I mean, I honestly, I can't play guessing games with this. It's not responsible as a practitioner, let alone as an FDN. We know better. But sometimes I think that my mom and I both have this genetic non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and that
Mhm.
is probably one of the main core things that created our fire, and then all this other stuff gets mixed in, right? So this is just a kind of fun thought experiment, it's more of a guess, but if you had to look back, considering again that you were living better than most people, was it maybe just a combination of something like some long-term food sensitivity that you're not aware of mixed with this high stress lifestyle, even if you were enjoying it, just high stress in a literal sense that there is a very demanding hormonal output needed to compete in the way that you were competing? Is it just kind of that perfect storm, or what do you think actually led to this, if you have a guess?
I can look back and see a lot of things now. For one, I was definitely over exercising, and back in the day, I was definitely under eating. So that was two huge things. So gluten for sure. I was also a crazy person, and I would do a lot of obstacle course races, and I broke my back.
Oh,
Um, so I was surviving on Advil and Tylenol. That was a big, huge portion of my life. I think between all of the life stress, I had a child that had an autoimmune disorder. So I think that that was a lot of stress in my body and in my life. So I look back and I can see like all the different things. So do I think gluten was a big part? Yes. But also I think, I wasn't really up on toxins as much naturally as I should have. We had changed a lot of cleaning products when we knew my daughter was sick in the beginning. So we kind of had some things, but like things I put on my body, I was not paying attention to. So God knows, the perfume I was using, the deodorant, the lotions, like all that stuff was adding just toxins to the body. So I can kind of piecemeal a couple of things together that I could totally see where I ended up. I mean, I broke my back and I was back working out like a week later.
oh,
Yeah, so I wasn't the smartest back then. I've learned a lot in the last, 7 years.
yes. Okay. That,
Much
that
smarter.
that would add up. I think that's what's interesting too, is this different perspective that we have, or these different lenses that we wear almost to view the world once we fully understand this stuff. And it's not to create, fear mongering around, oh my gosh, everything's bad for us. Like, I refuse to subscribe to that belief system that, like, oh my gosh, you guys are being too paranoid about stuff. It's like, no, we're doing things that we were never at all intended to be doing as human beings.
Completely.
Yeah, and I will not buy that that's fear mongering. I think we need to backtrack a little bit, because some
Right.
of this technological progression, I've always said, like, has been our regression, right? Regression of our health. It's like, so we look at these things as, oh my gosh, look at these amazing modern conveniences. You can be on your phone at 2 a.m. You could, clean things faster than ever before. You
Grab
can
food
get
real
food.
quick out of the grocery store and packages.
Yes, but at what cost, man? I mean, yeah, sure, you can do it quicker, but you're taking away some quality of life, to say the least, while doing that. So one of the main topics today is fatigue, and this is always a question that I kind of pose to anyone who comes on here, because I don't think it's a perfectly easy question to answer, and I imagine many of the people that would choose to listen to something like this might have this question. So here it is. If looking back, you said you were over exercising, under eating, all that stuff. However, you are also very correct to say that just because you were 40 or 45 or whatever doesn't mean that you should be rapidly shutting down, or your body should be rapidly shutting
Right.
down. So I guess, other than in a perfect world where everyone runs these functional labs almost proactively, because we know everyone's not going to do that, what are some things now, knowing what you know, that you would say might be warning signs to an individual who's experiencing this, that it's like, hey, this is where the line gets drawn between warning sign, red flag fatigue versus, hey, yes, obviously I'm not going to. It'd be amazing if I think I'm going to perform the same at 80 as I do at 29. Probably not going to happen. I notice a difference at 29 versus 18 just because I'm aware of my body, right?
Hmm.
So where does that line get drawn, I guess, between, hey, this actually makes sense versus, hey, this is a warning sign? Or would you always recommend testing to truly define that? I guess it's hard to define.
It's definitely hard to define, and I think, everyone lives such different lives, but, you know, I think when people and what I'm noticing with a lot of clients too, like your head hits the pillow, you're out cold because you're just exhausted, right? Now, normally you could have a busy day, you're tired, yes, you could fall asleep quickly, but a lot of people can't stay asleep and they're up every 2 hours. And that's where I was. I was up all the time, and I think that your body just is so exhausted that you can't stay asleep. The other one was waking up exhausted, like constantly just exhausted, reaching for caffeine. If you have to survive on caffeine to get through the day, then there's a deeper issue. If you're, naps, I'm a napper. Like, I love a nap, and there's nothing wrong with napping, but napping every single day, or, crashing out for a couple hours, again, big warning sign. If you're going to take a nap once every in the blue moon, that's not that bad. But if you're crashing every day, every other day. The other one I think is, fatigue after workouts. I think that if I look back now, I could see it for years where I would work out and everybody in the class would be back the next day and they'd be recovered. And I was sore and I was tired. And then I started to go from working out 7 days to 6 days to 5 days to 4 days. And everybody else was continuing to go. And I was like, okay, why can't I keep up with anybody anymore? Like, I wasn't recovering the way other people were recovering. And I think that looking back now would have been a big sign of just your body's exhausted, because you cannot recover to feel good. So your body just is exhausted.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So some of the big key takeaways then, just in summary, I'm waking up, I got, let's say, my 8 hours. So in theory, my sleep should be fine, but yet I still feel tired, or that I could lay here forever. And two, you're starting to notice, a decline in that ability to recover, which again is going to go down naturally with age, like we've talked about. But would it be fair to say that it's like a little more rapid than you might expect? Like, all right, right now versus 10 years ago, I can do certain things a little less, but actually I can do certain things a little more, right? I'm much stronger than I was at 18, for example.
Right.
But I definitely had more endurance, in my opinion, at 18 than at 29. So for them, it might be like everything's kind of going down. Like you're putting in the reps, you're going in, but you're not recovering. So actually a lot of these numbers would be getting worse, I guess, too. Was that happening to you?
Yes, and also the group of people that I was working out with were all ages. It wasn't like I was working out with 20-year-olds and trying to keep up with them. I was working out with people that were older than I was, and they were still able to make it through workouts and showing up the next day. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm like so dead and sore. And they're like, oh, really? I feel pretty good. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. You're 20 years older than me. So I think, again, it's person to person, but it was pretty drastic. And I could see, and again, I was like super sore. I couldn't even recover muscle wise. So I think it's person to person and age to age, but I don't know that I saw my numbers going down. I just knew that I could not keep up day to day with everybody that was in that class.
Sure. Well, it's something I brought this up like once on the podcast before, but it always kind of annoys. It's like one of those things that you're hearing it from the outside and like, I wish I could be there to explain this differently, because I think this is what she meant. And it was when Jordan Peterson's daughter was on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago, and she was very sick, right? I actually relate to her story a lot. She was super sick as a kid. And she talks to Joe, who's like all, very hardcore manly man mindset. Totally get that. And there's a time and place. But she was explaining to him how, Dad, Jordan, couldn't work out, right? Like he wasn't getting better. And then he's like, Joe stops him, right? Because he's in the mindset side of things. Like, well, he could work out, right? Like, could he get up and go to the fridge? And she's like, well, yes. He's like, okay, then he could work out, just kind of cutting her off. And then I just wanted to be there to say, okay, Joe, you're correct. And I thank God you haven't experienced this, but there is a whole group of us, because I felt this too at times, and I don't feel this anymore, thank God, that yes, if someone has a gun to your head, you could go do it. But you're expecting that once we do it, we're coming back stronger. And I've had that be the opposite case, where I come back and literally, that's why I asked about your numbers, because I've had times with strength training when I was very sick and didn't understand what it meant to be sick. I'm doing the reps. I'm actually even eating the calories, except my numbers are going down. Like it's almost like I'm getting weaker, or my reps would go down, for example.
Yeah. So physically,
that's the part he doesn't get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to call them my dead days. That's like your body exhaustion is just overwhelming, and you still have to get up and go to work, and you still have to get up and take care of your kids, and you still have to get up and make dinner when your body's telling you just to go lay down and take a nap. And it's just that exhaustion is absolutely torturous and horrible.
Yes. Okay. So for those that are out there, unfortunately experiencing this, and kind of just related to what you just said, that it is torturous and horrible, there is hope. Obviously, you work with these types of people. So when someone comes to you now, if they're already hearing some of these things, like, oh, dang, I really relate to that. Maybe Christa is someone that I would work with or look into working with. What are some of the things and labs, or in terms of labs and lifestyle, that you're going to utilize with everyone, or maybe just even some common things that you see on the labs? We can do both with these people who come in with this fatigue in their mid 40s, 50s, whatever.
Yeah, definitely adrenals. Adrenals and cortisol is huge. And I think the education to people about stress, and everyone just, comes to you and they're like, I'm not really stressed. Like my life isn't stressful, but they forget the amounts of different kinds of stress. So I think adrenals is great to show people that, I had a CEO who is like type A and like go, go, go. And once we looked at her adrenals and her cortisol, I was like, you need to stop. Like your body is telling you, like you're just on like go mode and you need to slow down. And so adrenals was huge for a lot of people, just to kind of even just give them an idea of where their body is. They may not think they're exhausted, but their adrenals have a totally different picture for them. So doing the Dutch hormone test, I absolutely love that one. I think it gives a great look to, how their livers are detoxing, because our livers, you can work on a lot of liver detox and still be, struggle with liver. So I think, a lot of people with liver and constipation has been huge. Food sensitivities, I think, is a great idea for people because they struggle with kind of like how to eat and what to eat. And they think, again, eating healthy is healthy. So I love being able to take off just a whole layer of inflammation for them to be like, okay, like this is just what's bothering your body right now, but let's just take it out, because we can see in the blood that it's inflaming your body. So it's just a whole easy level of food that we can just take off the list for, 6-9 months to kind of just let your body settle down. So I love that one. Stool testing, fabulous. I've just had a couple clients that their gut was so deteriorated. They had no good bacteria to support body, digestion, support energy, those kind of things. And I think when you don't have your body working for you, it's, you can't fix that. So getting your gut to kind of start working back again, giving them that digestion. I find a lot of people don't digest well, so they're not even getting their nutrients from their food. So it's not even able to help their body get energy. So, lifestyle wise, sleep is huge. People, think they can go to bed at midnight and sleep for 6 hours and get up and be fine, where obviously that is just not the case. We really need you to get to bed before 10 and really kind of getting them into a good sleep pattern, because if I can't get you into a good sleep pattern and you don't recover at night, then you're going to wake up exhausted anyway. So working on a lot of sleep, a lot of diet, telling people that's okay to say no, I think is one of the biggest takeaways that I learned, because you have kids that have birthday parties, they have sporting events, this one's having a cocktail night, this one's having this party get together, this one's having a birthday party, and you feel like you have to do everything. And I think at this day and age, when we're just also go, 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 it's okay to take time for yourself. It's okay to give yourself grace. It's okay to take a lay down on the couch day. It's okay to take time for yourself. Go to a spa, do some relaxation. I think that a lot of people just are in such this go mode because of the way that we live this day and age that they forget to like slow down. And I think that's a lot of education that I have to do. And sometimes I get a lot of kickback for that. But in the end, I've found people recover so much faster when we actually like slow down, take some time, listen to the birds, walk outside, get back to nature. All those kind of things is just huge in recovery.
When you say kickback, what does that sound like?
For me, laying in the hammock, reading a book outside, that's my kickback.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You said, I apologize. The way that you worded it was that you get some kickback from like potential clients or clients themselves, it seems.
Oh,
So
they fight me because they don't want to slow down, right? So like my CEO, who is like working, she's like, I'm too busy, I can't slow down. And it's like, okay, but if you continue this way, this is where we're going to end up. And sometimes it takes them a month or two to kind of sort of try it, but not try it. And then some of them all of a sudden are like, okay, you know what? You're right. I need to slow down. It's a lot of education, because that's how I was. When that doctor told me to like stop working out and slow down, it was like, who are you to tell me that? But I think that's where a lot of the education, showing them what their body signs are doing, to be like, you need to slow down. So some people I can get to really kind of settle and be aware of it. Other people are just in such a go life that they just have a lot of struggle to change it.
Yeah. And there is, it's all a trade-off, and obviously you know me, so I fully resonate with and get this whole type A thing and pushing as much as possible. I still probably push more than I should, but you can make certain trade-offs, and the more that you optimize certain things, the more bang you get for your buck. Like even to your point about the sleep, I cannot believe how many people it makes sense from a circadian biology perspective, but I still cannot believe how many people from switching like a 12 to 8, and most of them are 12 to 6, so you're totally right. But even if they were a 12 to 8, just switching from that to a 9 to 5, any type A can understand that this was still 8 hours. Okay. You only wasted 8 hours of your day sleeping, but you get such a bang for your buck. So if you can discipline yourself or figure out a way to arrange your lifestyle around that 9 to 5, now you're going to be able to do more in the day. Similarly, if I start eating well and eating higher quality stuff, it might cost more initially. It might be a pain in the butt to have to make it. But again, I get more output on the back end because I'm putting better fuel and stuff into my body. So if there is a thing one day that we can just take and it doesn't have side effects and it makes us perform longer, I admit, man, I'd have a serious philosophical debate with myself about whether or not I would take that. I'd be tempted for sure, but that's not here yet. So, and it might be soon, who knows? But for right now, at least, we got to optimize the stuff. Actually, I realize we're over 30 minutes in. I'm sorry, because anyone in the audience that has questions for Christa, please feel free to throw them in if you have any. Tracy asked, do you utilize breathing techniques or meditation?
Yeah, so part of the lifestyle change and ways to teach people how to like take away some stress, things like that. Yes, there's a couple of different breathing techniques that we talk about. A lot of people I'll teach how to do box breathing, meditation. Meditation is not for everybody. I struggle with meditation. I like yoga. I like to be able to go there, but I can't sit and just straight meditate. So I do suggest it, and we do some training in the program. But a lot of times, people are definitely much more apt to do some breathing techniques for stress relief. But yeah, those are both great ways to kind of lower your stress for sure, especially if you do it outside with some grounding, even better.
Oh, I don't know why
I can.
There can you still hear me? There we go. All right. And then I wasn't able to click off the question. That's one of those things. And I hate to admit this, but I kind of got out of, I used to do a form of meditation for probably an hour a day, like 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. Wow. And it was mostly around like goal visualization. And then as I got the certain things that I wanted, I kind of stopped doing them. And I think that's probably one of the best habits that I ever had. So it's kind of funny that you would allow yourself to not do it anymore when it's literally one of the best things for me. That's another output thing, right?
So maybe that's a reminder that for you to start getting back into it.
Yes. Thank you, Christa. I will definitely let us know on the podcast if I am able to effectively implement that again, because that's an output thing. It's like on the surface, it seems like, oh my gosh, why am I spending 30 minutes doing this on the front and back end of my day? But the reality is, with how much more productive and clearer I'm thinking throughout the day, it's actually an investment because you're able to do things more effectively throughout the day. So one of the other things I wanted to ask was just what is kind of, if you can only run one test, what is kind of your favorite test after, a few years of being an FDN? Even if it's not a foundational, that's perfectly fine. I'm just wondering if you could only run one with all of your clients, what would you choose?
I feel like the Dutch is great, especially for women in perimenopause. I think looking at their hormones is great, but it gives you so much in there. I love to show them their adrenals. It's one of the biggest things with fatigue, and I love to be able to be like, okay, this is what your circadian pattern is on paper. So you think that you're sort of sleeping, but you're really kind of not. Let's look at your adrenals. It gives you a little bit of how your liver is processing. And I think, again, that's another big scenario. But the hormones too on women, to get them a little bit more balanced has also been very, very helpful. So I'd say the Dutch for the most part. I mean, it's a really struggle because I do love a couple of them.
I would, I might have a follow-up for that, but I'd always want to honor the audience first. And Bethany said, hi, sister. I struggled with the exercise intolerance too. Proud of you and the work you're doing. I know that you said that you have sisters. Is this a literal sister or just a female?
This is, one of my sisters. Okay. And she struggled a lot. We both actually went through some severe fatigue together. And it's kind of funny. My family tried out for Family Feud. And this is just where the exhaustion will get you, is that you had to be on in the interview process. Like you had to give 100% energy in this end process. And the two of us after, it took us 2 weeks to recover just from expending the amount of energy that we needed for that. And she's also the one that really got me into functional medicine. She had seen a functional doctor first. And then after I graduated FDN, she became an FDN too. So
really? Okay.
Little sister wanting to be like big sister.
That is awesome. I never know if that was like, I guess Sista with an A is normally more.
Oh yeah, no, she's
the friend sister. That sounded like a literal sister. So that's very cool. We're glad you're here, Bethany. Thank you. Okay, quick follow up then with the Dutch, because I kind of want to get into the point of talking about maybe some client testimonials or just transformations. So even preceding that though, with the Dutch, is there anything out of all the ones that you ran, is there anything that comes to mind if I were to ask, like, what's something that has come up on a Dutch test for a client that was like particularly shocking or particularly telling for them? And I just mean this in the sense of like kind of how I didn't burst into tears, but it was probably as close as I could have been. I feel like you and I experienced very similar things when we first got our labs back, where it was this wave of relief, validation. I love that you used that word because that's what it was. My labs were terrible, but I was like, thank God I have something to work on. I already knew I felt terrible. I didn't need labs for that, but I did need to know what to work on and why I felt terrible. So is there any time that you ran a Dutch test that something like that comes to mind where, you know, the client saw and was like, holy cow, or you found something where you're like, I would have never known this without the Dutch, and it was a huge healing opportunity for the person?
And I do think I go back to my CEO, who was my type A person, who, you know, on paper had energy. I mean, she came to me mainly because she had some stomach stuff and she, you know, couldn't leave the house because her bowels were just constant. And then once we did the Dutch, and I was like, her cortisol levels were tanked to the point where I'm not sure I could understand even how she was getting out of bed. And again, just super eye-opening for her to be able to point to the fact that like her lifestyle in the current state that she was in, the way she was eating, the way she was, you know, again, not, you know, drinking, people, you know, have cocktails here and there, you know, she'd have a glass of wine at night, but again, like just lifestyle things that were just tanking her body. And I think that was super validating for her, even though she didn't come to me so much for fatigue because she didn't think she was tired. But once we slowed things down, her body like responded. She kind of crashed a little bit in the beginning once we took away caffeine and all that kind of stuff. But then by the end of our sessions in 4 months, she's had more energy doing less in her day than obviously what she was doing. And she's now back outside enjoying life. She's out walking, you know, enjoying the nature sounds. You know, she's sitting by the fire with her husband at night just to decompress. So I think for her to watch her whole lifestyle that she's been doing for so long completely changed because of what I showed her on this Dutch was, I mean, it like, you know, sometimes I get all teary because some of my clients do so well, and you just change the trajectory of their life. Because if she kept going the way she was going to be so sick and so exhausted and so out of touch with life. And now she gets to go back and enjoy her family, which she was really just not able to do.
That's awesome. Well, and that kind of transitioned into a nice client testimonial anyway. Are there any other particularly cool stories that come to mind? We don't have to do another one, but I'm just wondering if there's any particularly cool ones that come to mind. I always just love to hear that it's not just us as the people who are practitioners that can do this. Other people can do it too. Even a CEO who I imagine is extraordinarily busy.
I will say, so now granted, my daughter's not a woman over 40 that I treat, but she was diagnosed at 2 with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Long history of illness, constant on-off medications. And once I did the labs on myself and figured out how truly eye-opening they were, once I first graduated as an FDN, I was like, we're testing you. So we did a bunch of labs on her. And again, completely eye-opening to where her body was. So, you know, all the things that we did, she was failing every medication they were throwing at her. And again, now I'm in this holistic space and I just like can't even continue to pump poison into this child. Granted, you need medication when you need medication, but at this point I was like, let's do some lifestyle changes. And I'll tell you, her rheumatologist told me that taking gluten out and giving her a couple of supplements was not gonna change her trajectory of her disease. And I want to go back now and slap that man in his face a little bit because she is off all of her medication. She is having no joint flare-ups. She's thriving at 22 years old, graduating from college. It's just life-changing for her. It took me a while to kind of get her on board, but once we did all the labs and kind of changed all the things that she needed to, she's gaining weight. She was always very, very skinny and petite. She's finally gaining weight. She has energy, living a great life at college. So she's another one of my like great stories of just life transformation.
Well, I think not only is family an amazing one to always share, but especially when it's your daughter, I don't have kids, right? So I can only comprehend that through other people. And it seems like that's probably one of the most amazing things that you could do, especially if she had it that young. And just to be clear, you said it's autoimmune, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what's even nuttier. I won't, Ev, you got to back yourself up because I don't want to get fully into this.
We can be on forever.
we talk about getting into the science of these things. I'm not talking about some late stage cancer. That's a whole different beast.
Right.
Autoimmune disease. This is on PubMed. Any human being can go on PubMed and read these studies that show we now know that almost any autoimmune disease, this doesn't matter if it's psoriasis, MS,
Everything.
lupus, or whatever, they require three things. This is from Western researchers. They need a genetic component. Okay, fine,
Yep.
fair enough. I don't like genetically modified foods. Last thing I want is genetically modified humans, okay? And that's, interestingly enough, that's probably coming too, but let's ignore that one. I can't fix that, fine. Well, I still need two other things. This is what they say, not me. Environmental trigger or triggers. Okay, well, I don't know about you, Christa. I feel like there's probably some things that we could do testing wise to look at that, but let's even go to the third one. The third one says they need a meaningful amount of intestinal permeability. And if you guys don't know what that is, that's leaky gut.
Full on
They're
leaky gut.
saying that.
Yep.
And I look at
both.
this. Yeah. And of course, leaky gut is not a diagnosis, nor do we
Nope.
treat anything specifically. But Christa, we certainly have labs that show how permeable someone's gut is. And I don't know about you, but I have done things with clients that led to those labs looking significantly better. I'll put it that way. And I'm sure you have as well. So, okay, if I have a stool that has 3 legs and I know for a fact that I could basically rip out 2 of them, well, I don't have a stool anymore. I have, a pile of wood. So I will shout that one from the rooftops anytime autoimmunity is brought up, because the idea that not only do they not address this stuff, but they're going to look at a mom and say, oh, you can't do anything with just this stuff. It's like, well, there's got to be some triggers, right?
Yeah.
And you definitely can do stuff about leaky gut. In fact, if you probably do stuff about the triggers, it's probably going to affect the leaky gut in a positive way, right? So guys, don't take my word for any of this. Please go fact check this if you have an autoimmune disease.
I mean, I've seen it,
it's
firsthand, When,
crazy.
we did a bunch of labs, we looked at like MTHFR, which obviously, her and I both have. So, that changed a little bit. We just did a Lyme test because her doctor was like, oh, she doesn't have Lyme. But, I ran a couple of labs and she had Lyme, she had strep, she had, like 2 other co-infections, and it was like just wreaking havoc. So, this started when she was 2, and I could look back and, see a couple of things. And it's like, not one person ever opened my eyes to looking at it in a different way. It was only, what medication can I give her to take her symptoms away? Which again, we're tanking her immune system. Completely the opposite of what she needs. So yeah, it's been fabulous to watch her heal and know that, I wish I could go back to all these doctors and be like, could you just open your eyes a little bit? Like, just be open to trying something different instead of just telling me this is not going to work. And I'm sorry, the only thing that's going to fix her is medication.
Well, she's extremely lucky to have you, obviously, which is really cool. And this is totally odd coincidence. I hope I'm not just putting something where it doesn't belong. I'm almost positive. Remember, I brought up the Joe Rogan, Michaela Peterson thing. Yeah. I think Michaela actually had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and that's what she had her hip, part of her hip removed because of it. I mean, she was in such bad pain. So, crazy. I am so sorry because I see your name all the time. Paola? I will have to look this up. I apologize. I never like getting names wrong. But anyway, this person asked, to that point of tanked cortisol levels, what are the best starting points for a client or patient to get them going so they can actually start exercising, which feels daunting now? So I guess this person means, like, if we don't have the labs, is there any general advice that we could give to help them kind of get things moving here?
Yeah. And I think what I teach my clients a lot of times is pretty much like take a step back. Now, if you're not exercising at all and that feels daunting, walking is the best thing. Now, you don't need to go get 10,000 steps. I tell people, walk 10 minutes after a meal. Start there. Do that once or twice during the day, build up. Maybe it's after dinner that's where you're taking your walk. And I think a lot of times when you're taking a walk after dinner, you're walking, so you're digesting a little bit better. You're being outside in the environment. Don't go with headphones. Go with someone that you can either chat with, take your dog so you can talk to them, or listen to like the birds, or like look at the leaves and like look at the clouds, like be outside and be present. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is that in our go lives, we forget to be present. But start slow. Like, there's no reason that you need to go out and get 10,000 steps. You can build up on things, set a goal of, 500 steps if that's where it starts. I do love heated yoga for people that are also starting. Now, again, if you're really exhausted, it is a little tough. So what I tell people to do is go and kind of go through the motions, because in yoga, you can put in 10% or you can put in 100%. And I'd say just go 10%. I mean, when I started back, I was child's posing left and right because that's all I could handle. But again, I was present. I was in the yoga class listening to them talk, which I thought was great. I did a little heat, not Bikram, because Bikram is overwhelming to the body for me. Or just a little heated yoga. So you're sweating, you're detoxing, you're present. Like there's just heated yoga, I think, is another great way to just kind of get back into things. So those would be my two really kind of like nice, easy points of kind of getting back into moving.
That's awesome. And I feel like an idiot because I've never asked her how to pronounce her name directly, and she said like Paula, so that was about as easy as it could get. So thank you, Paula. I will not forget that now. And yeah, great recommendations with because again, this is the stuff I think, especially to like a CEO type. I don't know that direct person, obviously, but oh my gosh, getting outside, whatever, is that really going to help them much? It's like, actually, yes, that stimulates ACTH, which stimulates cortisol. So you actually have, in a sense, more bang for your buck hormonally by going out and doing that stuff. So again, we have all these technological progressions, but the reality is nature is perfect. And we
Put
are
your
our
feet on the
strongest.
ground, do some grounding. You know, I
Yes.
tell people like go out and like look at the different kinds of trees because it makes you feel present. So people like with anxiety that get so caught up in their heads, you know, I give them like touching things, right? Because they need to kind of have that distraction. So when I'm like, go outside, like touch the different rocks, touch all the trees, like count how many trees there are out there, look at the leaves, like touch the different leaf patterns, like just be present out there. And it's just light, it's changing. It's so good for you. Even if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes.
All right, Christa, speaking of 5 minutes, we're at 50 minutes somehow, so flew by today.
It
Where
did.
can people find you if they would like to work with you?
So my website, I know my last name's a little tough to spell there. So Christa Rebidue Functional Wellness. I'm also on Instagram. It's Christa Rebidue Functional FXNL Functional Wellness. You couldn't quite fit it all in there. And same on Facebook, Christa Rebidue Functional Wellness. If you go to my website, you can email me. You can book a discovery call. We can just chat. You can Facebook me, DM me, anything that works to just connect.
And Krista is obviously an experienced FDN. It's always just cool to see people that are still doing this, a few years later. And that's the majority, I would say, but it's easy to get through an online program and then kind of fall off. I love people that like there's truly like before FDN and after FDN for them. So really just cool to see out there helping people. Now, I do not know if you've ever made it through 50 minutes of me and listened to the last question of the show, but I do have the signature question for you, which in this case is, if I could give Krista a magic wand, you could wave it and you could get all of our viewers and listeners to do just one thing for their health. So that means you could get us to all start doing one thing, or you can get us to all stop doing one thing. What is the one thing that you get us to do?
I'd say walk outside. I'd say the one thing you could do is walk outside. There's just so many benefits. And again, it doesn't have to be long. You need to get outside, be one with nature, be present with yourself, move, right? Get some exercise. You'll feel better. You'll sleep better. So I think definitely getting outside and moving. Now, granted, I live in New England. Winter is tough, but I will still get outside if I can, as long as it's not negative numbers. So, you can go out, bundle yourself up for a 5-minute walk, but get outside.
I realize normally this is where we would end. I'm sorry, I have a bonus question for you. It's a good one, an easy one. I just forgot to ask it because I allowed myself to get distracted, I think, by one of the audience questions. I didn't even ask you directly, so it's been a few years now. We never expect someone to come on the show being in perfect health. That's fine if you're not. But if you had to say on a percentage scale, like what percent better would you say you are now compared to when you were passing out at your workouts?
I am a completely different person. I monitor my energy levels for sure. Like I'm still a little protective of my energy, but for the most part, I have energy. I feel like I have life again. I really was to the point where, I don't like to say depressed because I'm not, there's this, it gets a lot in there, but I didn't go to my class reunion because I didn't want to be out and be social. And I said no to so many thing. And that exhaustion is it's like such PTSD for me. And now I have got energy. I'm out, I'm in golfing league. I joined a women's golf league. I enjoy my kids. I don't feel that I sleep great. Like I am just a different human than I was 3 years ago. And I do thank almost every day that I found FDN because it changed my life. It changed my sister's life. It changed my daughter's life. And I've changed, the amount of clients that I've had, and just to see their progression and to see them living their best life after all of this has made all of it worth it.
Okay.
I know why I tanked.
Yes.
I tanked so I can help people.
Krista, well, we're glad to have you. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.